our new, sorry, I've forgotten your title. Children's Operations Service Director. So very welcome to Luton. Apologies for absence. I think we've got full house, have we, Angela? Yeah. Can I sign the published record of the meeting of the 6th of November? Thank you. Remind members of section 106 if you've got any that you need to declare. And we have some business, I believe, not covered on the current forward plan, but this will be taken in the private sector section of the meeting. And item 4, business not covered, we haven't any, but we do have a reference from Overview and Scrutiny Board, I believe. Yes. Are you taking that, David? Thank you.
Simple and straightforward, really. This is the second time that we've been here with this. It's come forward again from Overview and Scrutiny. You'll note that at Overview and Scrutiny, the prime councillor involved, which is Councillor Stevens, deliberately abstained because he lives in Cutno Road and he didn't want any personal bias to be considered. The thing is very straightforward, which is that we're asking that the executive and portfolio holder in particular, that we just make a decision, but you need to be aware of the fact that there is apparently still another study going on in another adjacent area, which is Baker Street, May Street and Cambridge Street. And rather than having this coming toing and froing to executive, I think we need to just try and make a clear decision as to what we're going to do going forward in that area. And Councillor Stevens says he's prepared to accept whatever view you take, Javid.
Thank you, Councillor Wind. So on the first bit about the reference regarding the rates, obviously if we waited every time for the rates to be like that on local elections, sometimes it's only 12 or 14%, and then the residents have to accept the councillor, whoever it is, if they choose not to vote. All the residents were communicated, and unfortunately not many chose to do. So I can't say that if we accepted 30% as if I set an arbitrary figure or agreed an arbitrary figure, I think we'd struggle to get anything done. So on that, so the second point B about the 10 to aim, that was only I'd said I'd view that based on, because we come to a bit of an impasse on this year. And the third about this additional knocking resource, well, that everything else comes at a cost here. And why do we do CPZ? So we do it for residents where they think they've got nuisance parking, whether that be due to airport parking, be due to commuter travel, due to a school or something. And unfortunately, we wouldn't, again, we have to make a decision based on the people who are prepared to do it. But we do it ultimately to help the residents, because, and back to the other original point that you've made, so let's just put some context behind this. So we had it was delayed because this is the third time this has come, because we also had that something similar at full council. Now, we decided originally that the figures weren't enough, and I agreed to allow Councillor Stevens a month extra along with Charmaine so they could go back, because what I wanted from them was, I'm not their ward councillor. The previous ward councillors were very much in favour of doing this CPZ. I gave them, which I thought, being non-political, I gave them an opportunity to go back and knock for their own, so they could give me an informed decision. Now, Councillor Stevens has indicated to me right now, a lot of the councillors do sometimes live in the ward. That doesn't stop you. You're a representative of the ward. All I wanted from him here was an answer as to what your view is. That ultimately, I myself and the service director would make the decision. Now, Councillor Charmaine was very clear on our position that she did what she at the time, because of the number of figures and cost of living, she wasn't in favour of it, which was very clear. officer recommendation was very clear that we should still go ahead with it, because typically this is the sort of response we get. At that point, I didn't make the decision because if I'd gone with the councillor Charmaine's, then I would have had the Labour councillor supporting the Labour thing. So I gave him a month's time, yeah? Roll on another month's time. Now, last week you asked me, why is it delay? Councillor Stevens asked me for another month, and I said, sorry, because the real surveys that actually really count are the ones that are official ones. The other that Charmaine did was to give them additional work so they could come back and feed to me, yeah, in a democratic process, what they felt, what was their steer, yeah. Ultimately, as portfolio holder, I would make the decision. And unfortunately, I'd say Stevens copped out, yeah, because now what you get, yeah, he'll have 50% of the people, because even his second, where his fellow Liberal Democrats helped him out to do the door knocking, yeah. So I appreciate they spent a lot of time. He'll have 50%. As soon as this goes on, right, as far as I see it, it'll be a case of, yes, the Labour councillor chose to make this, yeah, not this, yeah, and it's going to be I'll be getting it. Now, ultimately, all I asked for was from both the ward councillors, and that's not unfair, is to have an expectation from them to give me a steer, yeah. Ultimately, yes, I'll make a decision with the officers, but what I don't want to do is play political ball play, because I would have been very happy if it said on this but one of the things that Councillor Stevens did was there was never ever a talk of free, because we don't give free parking anywhere else in the borough, because as soon as we do it in South, there's a financial implication. We set a precedent for the whole ward. We don't do it for where there's hospital parking. We don't do it where there's major employees. So in this instance, yeah, I'm going to note this, but I'm going to be rejected, because I'm not going to change the policy to, at a minimum, if we are setting an arbitrary limit of a minimum there, it's same as we could say that why don't we have a minimum for elections? We don't, and I won't be doing it. And we haven't got the budget to employ people to knock on doors. Ultimately, the CPZs are there to help the residents. But to your point, which is very, very pertinent, I would always, and I already suggested to Councillor Stevens, because I've had complaints already from Harcourt Street and Cowper Street, yeah, about parking. Yeah, all you're going to do is once you put this in, you're going to displace it. So I'm happy to look at it as a zonal. So we can look at it as if the survey for the other roads comes up that they want it, then we can say, yeah, we'll do it these roads as well, because otherwise you're just going to displace more on here. But if it gets rejected on there, then I'm going to reject it across the whole 5 roads. Thank you.
Am I right in saying that since we got another study to come, I believe Baker Street, May Street and Cambridge Street, look at the results of that and then make a decision for the whole piece?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a sensible thing to do is to make a decision.
That I'm quite happy with. What I don't want to do is to keep having the ping pong with it coming from OSB to here and back again. It's a waste of everybody's efforts.
I want to clarify, are you rejecting this?
Yes. Yes.
Rejecting this.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments from anybody? Rob?
Yeah, just excuse me, it is a comment, really. I totally agree with Jared in relation to the rejection, firstly, but there is, for me, I believe there is an issue with consultation, and I think maybe we should have a focus within the council on how we can improve consultation, how we can try to make it better for people to get involved with the decision making, because I do think it's quite weak, the responses we get, because I think the views taken, if they don't respond, then they agree with it. So I just wondered if we could have a little bit of a focus on how can we improve our consultation process, that's all.
Rob, I'm happy to look at that, but obviously if we are going to employ people to knock on door and all that, and the view at the moment is, as you say, it's taken as if you are not, so CPZs especially we only put CPZs in to help residents at complaints from residents, so nuisance parking. So you would have thought that people who want it would be the ones that actually are knocking our door down, because I've got 5 years worth of people elsewhere who are begging for this to happen, yeah, and it's just it's in the work program. So I think we can look at the overall how we can engage better. I can talk to comms, but unfortunately, one thing the comms people have already looked at first, it's typically across a number of councils that we get less than 30% rate. It's not unique to Luton. Adam Keeney's team have already looked at and provided me that data.
No, it's not about finance and spending money. It's all about how we, what you say. Is there a better way of communicating it? That's all. Thank you.
James.
Thanks. Just coming on the finance part, it's more a point of order really around the comment here that sort of says there are no financial implications associated with this report. I would tend to disagree with that, sort of saying, you know, if we were to agree this would be mandating a minimum amount on consultation responses, sending officers in at specified times multiple times per week, and then asking to basically employ students to up our consultation rate. So just a bit concerned at how that sort of got missed and that they thought there was no financial implications. To me, that sort of very clearly says there are financial implications in the report. Thanks.
So you support the recommendation?
I support the recommendations that Javid's put forward. Yeah, I've rejected. Yeah.
Thanks, James. Tom?
There's certainly the report on there's financial implications on it. But my view is, I'll support what you're saying, Javid. I will send it back to Overview and Scrutiny Board, because my opinion is that they're coming forward with stuff like this, what has got a financial implication, what's going to cost us money. You know, they want it free over there, but Chorley hasn't got it free. Nowhere else has got it free. And what I'd be saying to Scrutiny Board now is, if you want this, tell us where we're going to cut in the council to obtain the finances to do it. Because everywhere else in the council, we're all working hard on finding, you know, trying to stop cuts and find out where we can help out so the cuts don't come too hard after what the government's just done. We've got to find nearly £8 million. So say to Scrutiny Board, tell us where you're going to take the money from to do it. Or we do the same as what we do in the rest of the town and charge for it. Because to me, Scrutiny Board has now become a political animal instead of looking at what we're doing, and it needs to be sorted out pretty quick. Send it back to them and say, tell us where the money's coming from.
Are you recommending that, Tom, that something goes back to OSB? Is that agreed by everyone? Okay. Are there anybody? Yes, Javeria.
Thank you very much, Chair. I mean, for my 2 pennies worth, since I am mentioned by name on page 37 of the report in Appendix B, I actually thought originally 21% was actually quite good from a survey of this size. And for me, I completely agree with what colleagues have said, and I'm completely supportive of what the deputy leader has said as well. Is that, you know, we need fairness across the entire borough. If we're going to, I don't know, employ temporary staff for one specific scheme, it has to be across the board. And where are we going to find the money from at this moment in time? And we need to stop this ping-ponging from the exec to, you know, Overview and Scrutiny Board and vice versa, because it's not doing the residents any favours at all whatsoever. But for me, like I said, for my 2 pennies worth, 21% at the time, I thought it was a very good, reasonable rate of return when it comes to surveys. And I think this goes to the bigger piece about how do we engage, you know, local people in the democratic process. I think that's something, you know, that we all need to consider as a larger piece of work, because it's important that residents know that, you know, they need to be involved in the decision-making process from the outset. And how do we engage them? This is more of an engagement process as opposed to anything else. But I'm completely supportive of what the deputy leader has said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Javeria. Anybody else? Are we happy then? The recommendation to reject this report and write back to OSB along the lines that Tom referred. Have you got those down there? Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Right, first one is me. This is the report to replace Councillor Javed Hussain with Councillor Fatima Begum on the Integrated Care Board and Integrated Partnership Board with immediate effect. It's a simple operational decision. Is that agreed by members? Thank you. The next report is from the monitoring officer, and it's part of our continuing review of the council's constitution. The monitoring officer has undertaken a review of the schemes of delegation to officers with the aim of consolidating them into a single document. There will be a number of beneficial outcomes from this exercise. There will be less pages for people to have to deal with, and the document will be easier for officers to navigate with greater clarity and ease of use. As this has been a process of consolidation rather than change, there have been no material amendments to existing delegation beyond those required for greater clarity or to reflect matters of fact or law. The proposed additional delegations are set out in the appendix on the report, which includes an explanatory note as to why it's considered appropriate. And I see Mark is here in the room, so if anybody's got any questions about that delegation, you can ask him. Okay, with that, I move the recommendations on the report. Are there any questions? David?
Thank you, Hazel. I'm looking at the schedule on page 69, just a bit curious about the use of the term special severance. I would expect that in most cases, this probably would refer to redundancies. But since you're not using that word, are there any other circumstances in which special severance payments might be made?
I assumed there were. I'm assumed there were.
Thank you, Chair. This is a specific term which is used in regulations that have been issued by central government in relation to those situations where people leave the council's employment under circumstances other than redundancy. So, for example, if there is a settlement in relation to a dispute or a disciplinary proceeding.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Okay, David. Okay, yeah. Anybody else got any questions? Happy to agree the recommended report? Thank you very much. The next report is also me, and it's to do with the progress report on our Luton 2040 vision of a healthy, fair and sustainable town. The report tracks progress against our overarching aim of creating a town free of poverty and includes data and trends across the 5 2040 priorities, as well as the overarching aim of reducing poverty. Within the report, there are both areas to celebrate and areas where we do need to improve. I draw members' attention to Appendix A, which outlines the system-wide recommendations that we will be taking forward in the future if the report is agreed tonight. And I will try to answer any questions, but I do know that the team are here if you've got any questions that I can't answer. So are there any questions from anybody? Yes, David first.
Thank you, Hazel. I'm looking at page 85 and the 2 recommendations at the top of that page. It was the view expressed at Overview and Scrutiny Board that it would be better if the language were actually plain English. Nobody knows what phrases like using data tools such as the minimum income standard to explore policy interventions actually means. I defy you to give me a description of what the real meaning is. Create poverty-proof work pack for organisations and businesses. It's gobbledygook, it doesn't mean anything, and you should stick to plain English, and then people would understand exactly what you're trying to do.
Happy to take that back and we'll look at the wording. Yeah, happy to take that back. Anybody? Oh, sorry, Jared.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, areas that require further. The one that concerns me is 59% of respondents to a recent survey said they were satisfied with Luton as a place compared to 73% last year. That's obviously a significant drop. And I think, are we expecting something back? Because obviously that's quite a big drop for
Well,
residents.
We're obviously going to work on that. It's part of what the agenda will be for the future. There will be, you know, we went through a pretty tough time after COVID, and people's income through the cost of living rises. I'm not surprised some people might not feel too happy about things when this actually was taken. But we will be, as we review every year, and hopefully with all the work that we're doing in the town now, all the stuff we're doing around waste collection, our war on waste, I'm hoping that we will bring the agenda back up. Is there anyone else? No? Are we happy to agree the report? I think that's last of me. And now move over to item 11 and Luton Adult Learning Self-Assessment. Javeria.
Thank you, Chair. Very excited. I'm presenting my first item. So this is basically a report from the Luton Adult Learning Self-Assessment Report, and the recommendation to the executive is to approve the Adult Learning Services Annual Self-Assessment Report, and obviously to instruct officers to submit the report to Ofsted. Just a quick by way of background, in terms of purpose, the purpose of the report is part of the risk-based approach to inspection. Ofsted requires organisations in receipt of Education and Skills Agency, the ESFA, funding to submit an annual self-assessment report. And the aim of this self-assessment report is to provide evidence of evaluation of the previous academic year's activities and impact. And obviously there's some background, and that the self-assessment report is from the academic year 1st of August 2022 to the 31st of July 2023. And the Luton Adult Learning have assessed themselves as having a good rating. Statistics show that many of Luton's residents experience a level of difficulties, including economic deprivation, low skills and poor mental health. In addition, Luton is home to a large number of non-English speakers. It is in this context that the service aims to use Luton Council's ESFA grant and other funds so that they have the greatest opportunity and positive impact on the life chances of Luton citizens. The service works alongside their economic growth colleagues to tackle poverty, aligning to the 2040 vision. And obviously, Ofsted uses 4 key judgments in order to grade the provision. Firstly is the quality and education. Second of all, behaviour and attitudes. Third is personal development, and fourth is leadership and management. And the service has identified many strengths in all 4 areas, which is good, although there are some areas for development, which is of course expected, and which they have identified as: first, too few teachers identify and correct learners' punctuation and grammatical errors. Second, in a very small minority of subcontracting, the craft of teaching needs to be further developed. Third, apprentices receive insufficient impartial careers advice about careers outside the path that they are studying for. They need, of course, information, advice and guidance on the transferable skills that they are developing, so that there is no tramlined into the career pathway that they are studying for. So they have more options and flexibility. Fourth, events, activities, experiences, information, days, events are not leading to enough active citizenship. Fifth, too few apprentices achieve their qualifications within the planned timeframe. I mean, that's something we're actively looking at. And lastly, leaders need to go beyond compliance in regards to subcontractors. The oversight of subcontractor quality needs to be more tightly managed. I do have here the report author, Meryl James, who's our Adult Skills Delivery Manager. So if any of the exec members have any specific questions, I'm sure she'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Javeria. Are there any questions? Yes, Tamina.
Thank you. Yeah, as ever, it's positive, especially with the vocational qualifications. Good to see the retention, the pattern, the achievement. Javeria, thank you for highlighting the concerns around apprenticeship. There is a notable drop from 2018 to 2019 in terms of the number of apprenticeships that we've got for young people enrolling onto between 16 to 24. So it's less than half than it was in 2018. So can we just have some light shed on why that might be? Because obviously we want to drive apprenticeships up as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we have seen nationally a drop in apprenticeships, and there are lots of national strategies happening that we are a part of to try and get more people on board. Luton in particular are trying very hard to get more apprentices employed. We've got a big push on that within the council, and our economic growth colleagues are working really hard in order to recruit more apprentices. And we are working within adult learning with various different departments around the council in order to try and convert vacancies into apprenticeships. So we are confident that those statistics will go up.
Thank you, Chair. If I could perhaps come back on that as well, just a point of reassurance here. One of the first things that was on my shopping list as soon as I came into the role was about how to obviously work closely with other departments within the council, as well as employers as well, the major employers within Luton, to drive up apprenticeship opportunities and skills, especially for young people and those who are obviously going through the adult skills. So that's something that I'm looking forward to, working closely with other council colleagues on as well. And then the other thing is I'm also going to be working closely with the comms team, hopefully be in touch with them shortly on how we can highlight apprenticeship opportunities, because it seems as though there doesn't seem to be there's not much high profiling of apprenticeship opportunities. So that's something I'm also going to be looking into as well. So there is stuff in the pipeline, and that's something that I'm looking forward to driving. Thank you.
Thank you, Javeria. Javed?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to touch on the quality of education. Too few teachers identify and correct learners' punctuation and grammatical errors. What's the definition? What's the too few, as a percentage here? Because obviously that concerns me. If teachers are not picking up grammar, that concerns me.
So too few. Within our Education and Skills Funding Agency grant funding, there are two strands. One strand is for accredited courses, so something with a qualification at the end of it. And in the main, adult learning deliver English for speakers of other languages, English and maths under that strand. And the other strand is for community learning, and they are courses such as wellbeing courses, non-accredited courses that are a gateway into getting people qualified, but they don't have an accreditation with those courses. And it was 2 or 3 teachers on the community learning side of the service that weren't marking spelling, punctuation and grammar, particularly on wellbeing courses, because they were focusing very much on the mental health issues and they weren't marking any spelling, punctuation and grammar mistakes. And Ofsted did pick us up on that. We'd already picked that up on our observations when we observed teachers. And so that is something that we are working very hard on going forward.
So I take it there'll be some retraining and to bring them up to standard?
Yes, so we've already put some training into place in-house. So we have a team of staff that work with the accredited programmes, and they are actually coming in and upskilling the teachers that are working on the community learning programmes. So we've got that started in-house already, and we've got some courses in the pipeline with some of the awarding bodies that we use, and we're going to put the community learning teachers on those awarding body courses as well.
Okay, did you want to come back on anything there, Javeria? Okay, any other questions from anybody?
Sorry, that's perfect, Chair. The only thing I just wanted to point out, just in the interest of transparency here, is that obviously the report did go to OSB. They made some minor suggestions, some minor tweaks. So obviously this report before you contains those minor tweaks. I mean, they weren't very substantive or material anyway.
Okay, thank you for that. Everybody happy to approve the report? Thank you. We now move on to item 12 and over to yourself, Rob.
Thank you, Hazel. This is the risk-based verification policy. The risk-based verification is a method of applying different checks to new claims for housing benefit and council tax reduction according to the risk associated with these claims. The aim is to reduce the burden on customers to provide excessive evidence and enable low-risk claims to be assessed and put into payment more quickly. Efforts can then be concentrated on those claims with a high-risk category where there is an increased chance of fraud and error. The risk-based verification module was originally introduced by Luton in October 2014. Once the customer applies for help online, they receive immediate confirmation of the verification required to complete their claim. It is important that the overarching policies applied at future subsidy audits will be based on this. Each new claim is allocated a risk score in real time of low, medium or high. The evidence requirements will differ based on the risk score assigned with high-risk claims requiring greater evidence to support those claims. An updated risk-based verification policy was approved in March 2023. The policy must be reviewed each year and cannot be amended in year, as this will complicate the subsidy audit process. The policy for Luton Council has now been reviewed for 24-25 with no changes being made. The executive is requested to approve the continued use of the risk-based verification policy for 24-25. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's out for any questions? Tom?
Yeah, I can understand why you need the risk matrix put into place, but my one question would be, people what are high risk, what are coming in and are looking for DHP or enhanced housing benefit. One of the few reasons we can get the property quickly is that we can turn around and say we are to the landlord, we are prepared to pay the DHP. Would that be affected if someone within the high risk category? Would that slow down that decision making process where we can tell the landlord no straight away at the moment? Just a question. If we're doing a deal with landlords, we need to. The tenant will go around and see the landlord. Landlord will come back to us. They want £1,300 a month, only 900 for housing benefit for a 3-bedder. So we have to tell them straight away if the people's going to get the HP or not. I just don't want to see that part slow down if someone becomes an high risk applicant.
Can you answer that, Rob?
Well, I refer to Dave. I mean, my question would be to possibly go for 2014 as it caused an issue in the past.
Yes.
Can I just say, I think the whole purpose of this framework is to speed up the processing. So absolutely coming back to your point, if there are any cases which will wait for further works to be done, we will process those cases on a case-by-case basis. So first shift of data is put high, but in your case, if there are certain things which will have to wait for the high risk cases to be looked at, but on individual basis in order to process that benefit, we'll do that. So that won't just put them in that category, but we can take it from that category and assess it on a case-by-case basis.
I might misunderstood you. So someone comes in, qualifies for, we've told them to qualify for DHP because we've got the agreement off the landlord, we've got a copy of it all and everything. Even if they're high risk, what you're saying, you make an interim payment to the landlord, and then if it's found that there's something wrong with it, that payment will be taken back later.
We will prioritize those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just we can't afford it. We got 568 today on discretionary housing benefit. We can't afford too much of an hold up.
Yeah.
Okay.
For them people.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I'll be happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a case. It's not come in front of me before that it's caused a problem, but I just wanted Dev to clarify that it wasn't really. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Any questions for anybody else? Happy to agree? Thank you. And then revenue and capital budget monitoring.
Thank you, Hazel. This report sets out the forecast outturn position for the current year based on the results of the Q2 September monitoring. Firstly, on the general fund review summary, Luton Council continues to deliver essential services to its residents while facing unprecedented financial pressures and uncertainties. The prevalent level of austerity clearly indicates that there are not enough resources available to local authorities to fund their current spending programmes. Depletion of reserves, increases in service demand, inflation costs and wage rises are the main driving force behind the authorities that have issued Section 114 notices. There are more authorities facing difficult financial challenges, and the recent autumn statement does not contain additional funding for local authorities to manage these testing times. The Council is not immune to these factors, and it is imperative to put in place prompt remedial measures to improve the current forecast overspend and address the underlying structural deficit to achieve a balanced outturn position by the end of the year. At Q2, the Council is forecasting a 5.17 million overspend at 6.52 million at Q1 against its 156.8 million revenue budget. The slightly improved overall position is largely due to reduction in interest costs on borrowing due to slippage in the capital programme spend. It must be noted that there are several one-off funding areas included in the budget, resulting in projected underlying gross core deficit of 7.382 million, which is the net of 3 million of savings delivered already. Furthermore, the projected core deficit across departments is 6.458 million, which is a deterioration of 271,000. There is also an estimated 1.9 million under recovery of housing benefit subsidy, as use of temporary accommodation for supported living is not fully covered by the local housing allowance, which raised the estimated gross core deficit to 8.358 million. The council's finances for 23-24 remain complex and challenging as a result of the rise in home to school transport costs, increase in the children's social care demand, and increased use of hotel and nightly rates due to scarcity of privately rented accommodation. Commercial properties income reduction, increase in the housing benefit subsidy loss, difficulty in recruiting in a very challenging local and national recruitment market, asylum impact, changes in the Building Safety Act and other legislation changes in adults and children. The use of specific contingency or reserves are not sustainable in the medium to long term and may not be sufficient to address the current budget deficit if no action is taken to bring the budget back to a balanced position. The council has to look at all the areas of spend and the services provided with a view to deliver a balanced budget and at the same time protecting key services. It's advisable not to allocate any contingencies until marked improvements are made and review the financial position at the end of Q3. The core underlying deficit, excluding any underspend, amount to 8.7 million. The total savings assessed as red and amber amount to 7.462 million, and savings assessed as a green amount to 1.254 million. The council has been trying to deliver some of the savings over the last few years, such as special education need transport, homelessness and shortfall in income and spend on agency staff, and it is quite challenging as demand is increasing. The Q2 report indicates an achievement of 2.304 million of the deficit recovery plan for 23-24. The council has embarked on a transformation programme to deliver ongoing cashable savings in order to address the current budget deficit and to address the long-term sustainability and financial resilience of the council. This has to be delivered at pace and scale in order to address this level of overspend. These savings, which are led by departments, have to be delivered and doesn't require any transformational initiatives. However, all the projects are captured and monitored as part of the overall transformation programme, including the bringing of the ICT service in-house. The multiple challenges we face are clear and will be difficult to fully overcome without a robust deficit recovery plan in place to keep the associated costs from soaring out of control. Notwithstanding this action, are needed now to improve the forecast of the current year and the prospects for next year's budget. A lot of work was done at budget setting time to make 23-24 budgets more sustainable, including additional funding, realignment of budgets and baselining of a significant amount of contingencies in order to enable saving proposals to be made while improving outcomes for vulnerable individuals. However, the effective delivery of these savings has been delayed further by the slowing down of the economy and the impact of inflation and the cost of living challenge. These savings have been reprofiled to be delivered over the next 2 years. This would require further work, good project management and continued focus on these issues by the service concerned at a time when there are a number of competing priorities. This will require close and ongoing review, monitoring and reporting. Departments have been requested to update their financial stability plans and deficit recovery plan. A range of recovery measures are underway across all services towards improving the current position. This monitoring and report provides an update on the progress made so far. On the capital expenditure, the 23-24 capital programme year-end forecast spend of Q2 is 87.301 million against a revised total gross budget of 171.2 million. 64.838 million for general fund, 21.463 million for the HRA and 1 million for corporate projects. Capital slippage is reported at 91.44 million, with the main reasons being capacity to deliver projects during 23-24. And in the case of property projects, acquisition delays are caused by the availability and suitability of appropriate properties. On the other funds, the current forecast overspend at Q2 for public health, 243,000, housing revenue 232,000, and schools budget 2.756 million, which 1.890 is for behaviour, inclusion and investment plan. I recommend the executive to note the position reported at Q2 and also noting some significant progress has to be made in the coming months to deliver a balanced budget this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rob. Are there any questions? No? Happy to agree the report? Thank you. We'll move on to item 14, Conchita.
Thank you. This report details how Luton Borough Council will deliver its statutory food hygiene standards and feed law enforcement services in line with the requirements of the Food Standards Agency Framework Agreement and Codes of Practice. The Food Standards Agency requires a plan to be approved by the relevant elected members forum to ensure local accountability and transparency. Where cuts to funding and resources occur, statutory obligations required by the Food Standards Agency as described in the plan will not be achieved, adversely impacting on the Council's public protection role. The plan was considered by Overview and Scrutiny Board on the 18th of September 2023. Executive is recommended to approve the Food Safety, Food Standard and Feed Law Service Plan for 23-24 set out in Appendix A. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Conchita, any questions on the food plan? David.
Yeah, thank you, Hazel. I've noticed in the last few months a significant increase in publicity surrounding prosecutions, particularly of food serving premises. I just wondered if this is due to more vigilant inspections, whether it's due to more offences having been identified, or whether it's merely due to more activity by the council's comms department.
The work has always been carried out by enforcement to make sure that food outlets comply with the regulations. There is a shortage of staff either on maternity leave or not being covered. However, the team is extremely working hard in ensuring that all premises are adhering to them, but prosecutions are being taken place because they are out there active to prosecute anybody that isn't complying.
Anybody else? Happy to agree the report? Thank you. And the Health and Safety Service Plan on item 15, Conchita.
This report details how Luton Borough Council will deliver its statutory health and safety function in line with section 118(4) of the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. There is a requirement for the plan to be approved by the relevant elected members forum to ensure local accountability and transparency. The report identifies the resources available for health and safety activities and sets out how these will be prioritised during the year. There is a requirement for the plan to be approved by the relevant elected member forum to ensure local accountability and transparency. Executive is recommended to approve the Health and Safety Service Plan 23-24 set out in Appendix A.
Thank you, Conchita. Any questions? Javid.
So my question relates to how, I was trying to look through the apprentice, how are we targeting? So there seems to be a lot of there's installation grant work going on, and I'm seeing a lot of people up on roofs without straps, without helmets, and especially walking underneath, and some of the pavements that are being taken up, you know, people, pedestrians, somebody could get hit with something. I know the foam isn't there, but it could be a cutting tool or something. What are we doing to protect those, you know, safety of the people doing the work and the safety of our residents who are walking on those pavements?
I think it's you do need to be mindful in terms of the limited resources that we do have, but I'm sure there is something there that the team will be looking at to ensure the health and safety of the public.
Just to make it clear that health and safety enforcement is split between the local authority and the health and safety executive.
Yeah.
When it comes to building and construction, that would be a health and safety executive matter. However, through our trading standards function, we are working with colleagues within the council across building control, planning and housing around the green energy installation businesses that are operating in their area, because it cuts across quite a few teams and departments that have an interest in these matters, of which safety has been raised.
Thank you, Liz. I think that's what I was really highlighting, to make sure that we're working collaboratively with them too, because if somebody gets injured, it's too late. We want to prevent those injuries to anybody up front.
Thank you, Liz. Tom.
Yeah, I'd probably be able to help with that one. Just a few weeks ago, Claire and other people had all the installers in what had come to our attention, but hadn't done the work right, weren't doing it right. To lay down the law a little bit to them. Some people are on the LA Flex list. Some people have been taken off the LA Flex list, and they're not very happy with the council and me at the moment that they've been taken off the list. But the office has been identifying, working towards them, and the ones that aren't operating properly, they've been talked to and removed from certain lists. Put it that way.
Do we offer support and help to these
tell them, yeah.
organisations before we take them off?
Yes, they
Yeah.
get all sorts of advice and everything else, but they choose not to listen to it. They're
Okay,
taken off the
sure.
list.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, happy to agree? Thank you very much. Can I take the regulation to move into private as